The New York Jets are now on the board.
Okay, Jet fans, Darrell, read this.
Being in New York has been one of the greatest blessings.
Zach's Fifth Avenue ran that one right now.
The New York Jets select.
Welcome to another episode of NFL Draft Preview. Ethan Greenberg, Dane Brugler talking quarterbacks, talking a little bit of the combine. They kind of go hand in hand here, Dane, because the quarterbacks all will throw, or maybe they won't all throw at the combine, but this is their last chance to impress scouts on the field other than their pro days. A big step in the evaluation process with medicals and interviews, and we'll talk about that as we talk about the combine. But as a prospect, Kenny Pickett, your top quarterback prospect, but not until the 30s on your top 100. So can you talk about this quarterback class as a whole and maybe how one guy can try to separate from the others to be QB1 come April?
Yeah, as impressive as last year's quarterback class was, 5 quarterbacks in the first 15 picks, including Zach Wilson at number 2, this quarterback class is a little bit of the opposite, where there's some talent, but none of these guys that you look at and say, okay, yeah, I have conviction this is going to be a quarterback that will lead us to the playoffs, or, is going to be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Now, maybe someone will surprise us and end up doing that, but it's hard to have any confidence in this group because you could poke holes in all of them. Pickett is my top quarterback. I think he has, probably the highest floor of any of these quarterbacks. You have a good idea of what you're getting with him. I love the passing instincts. Has the ability to throw receivers open. What he did this past year, coming back for his 5th season at Pitt, was outstanding. And I think that the confidence that he shows is more of a strength than a weakness, but there are times where he'll get greedy and maybe make some throws he shouldn't make. And there are some skittish tendencies. He was beat up a lot by pass rushers his first few years at Pitt. Senior year, offensive line did a much better job, but you could tell he was a little skittish from some of the past years where they struggled in that area. But his ability to throw from various platforms and throw with accuracy, that's really what you're betting on with a Kenny Pickett. So I think you're getting an NFL starter, a guy that can step in right away and at least make an impact. And so there are going to be teams that look at him and say, yeah, he's worthy of a first-round pick for us because he upgrades our quarterback position. We're not sure what the ceiling is. Can he be a guy that leads us to the Super Bowl? Maybe, but at least we know we're getting a starter who's at least going to compete week 1 for us.
You said Kenny Pickett in your eyes has the highest floor. Who in your eyes has the highest upside of this group?
I think you have to go with Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty, who has a really exciting set of skills with the athleticism, the arm talent. There's a lot to like about him. He's shorter, and he almost has like a running back build because he's 220. He's really compactly built, but he's a loose athlete. He's a play extender. The offense that he played in at Liberty, it's not really conducive to what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. And so there's some question marks there, especially post-snap. When that first read is taken away, can you find the secondary reads, the third reads? That's kind of the big question with him. And it's something where when you talk about mental processing, it's a projection. And so it's not that he can't do it. It's just we haven't seen it consistently yet. And so there are some question marks with Malik Willis, but a lot of excitement as well. Because when you have a guy with that type of skill set, he has intangibles. It's at some point you're willing to bet on a guy like that. And so it's going to be a different answer for different teams in terms of where they want to draft a player that probably isn't ready to see the field as a rookie. But when you think of where he could be 2-3 years from now, that's what gets you excited. And so good chance he goes in the first round. But it's again, teams are going to look at him differently in terms of what's the risk value, where do we feel comfortable drafting him.
For a guy like Matt Corral, who was not at the Senior Bowl, and obviously the Senior Bowl, I think when people think about the Senior Bowl, you think about guys who use that as a launching pad. Well, it feels like after talking to you, none of the quarterbacks were able to separate from each other in Mobile. For a guy like Matt Corral, who wasn't there, now teams will get to look at him both on and off the field and whatever he does in Indianapolis. Is that almost an advantage for him because there's a little bit of an enigma there because teams haven't seen him yet since the end of the college football season when he got hurt?
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of frame it because, I wouldn't say that going to the Senior Bowl, hurt any of these quarterbacks. But for Matt Corral, it's just a unique situation where he was the one quarterback of the first probably 7 that'll be drafted the one quarterback that wasn't there. And so he is kind of the main attraction among these quarterbacks, the guy that a lot of teams can't wait to see. And there's a lot of question marks with him. What's the size going to be? 6'2", 205? I was told he was under 200 pounds in the spring by the scouts who measured him. So what's the size going to be exactly? And then, the interview process is going to be big for him. He got, there's some immature things in his past from high school and college. He's been very open about, his therapy and battles with depression and alcohol and things like that. So the interview process will be big for him just in terms of selling himself to NFL teams. But on the field, that's where I think he's really going to shine, especially in this combine environment. He's an instinctive athlete. Everything he does is quick. The arm, the way he sees things, the movements with his feet. So I think in a shorts and a t-shirt, throwing against air, Matt Corral should do very well for himself this week in Indianapolis.
Dane, I know it's the end of February as we're recording this. The combine will be in March, the draft late April. So this is kind of a projection question, but it feels like in the past, at least specifically for quarterbacks and really all positions, a lot of players, like there's a lot of jostling in terms of position. Who's QB1, who's running back 1, et cetera, et cetera. Who's a quarterback that we should know about that maybe we're not talking about enough now, but maybe by the time the draft comes around, that quarterback will be in conversation, maybe not for QB1, but maybe like round 2, but before, like as we talk, maybe that's a day 3 player. Like the guy I'm thinking about last year, Davis Mills, felt like he kind of came out of nowhere towards the end of the process. So is there a guy similar to that where we're not talking about him, but then all of a sudden this guy's going to light it up in the interview process and he has good tape or good enough tape, and now we're like, okay, now his draft stock has risen?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if there's really a Davis Mills in this class. And, Davis Mills, we talked about him throughout the process as being maybe the most likely starter outside those top 5 guys. And so I don't know that was a big surprise with him, but this year, I don't know that we necessarily have – it's just not a great quarterback class in any part of the draft. And so we don't have – there weren't a lot of juniors that came out. Caleb Ellaby from Western Michigan is one who maybe could surprise. I thought his tape was more late round type of prospect. But, who knows? Maybe during the interview process, maybe during the combine, his workouts, maybe Caleb Ellaby will be able to impress and move up a little bit. The one senior that intrigues me, and I don't know that he has a ceiling as a starter, but I think he can be a backup in this league for a long time. And that's Jack Cohn from Notre Dame. Started at Wisconsin, transferred to Notre Dame for his final year. There's nothing about him that necessarily wows you, but he's a resilient competitor, very efficient as a passer. There are some athletic limitations. I think that's the biggest thing keeping him from maybe being a second-round pick, a third-round pick, but somewhere in the mid-round, somewhere day 3. I think Jack Cohn is a worthy draft pick because I love the way that he finds rhythm in the passing game. He delivers with timing, delivers with placement. So there's a lot to like about Cohn as a possible backup, although I don't know that he's going to necessarily reach that starter status.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up just generally, because are there any players that you think are in a similar vein where I'm thinking about the Jets a couple of years ago? They draft James Morgan, day 3, hope to develop him into a backup. And obviously that did not happen with the Jets, but is there a guy or a couple names that you think if the Jets were to draft a quarterback to develop him into a backup for Zach Wilson, you like as a fit, or you like him as a player?
Yeah, and I think outside those top 5 guys, talking about Pickett, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, and Desmond Ridder, I think those are the top 5 quarterbacks. And then that's where we get into some question marks. Carson Strong from Nevada's got the knee, got some other question marks with him. Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky is a nice player. I think could be a Case Keenum in this league. Mentioned Jack Cohn, mentioned Caleb Ellaby. And then after that, I think we're going into more guys that have very low ceilings, like Brock Purdy from Iowa State, a nice player, but 6'1", 205, very limited in what he could do. But a few developmental guys that have some traits that you could work with, but need a lot of development time. Guys like Cole Kelly from Southeastern Louisiana, EJ Perry from Brown. So there's a few quarterbacks that will be in that late round conversation who, it's hard to see them maybe coming out as, grading out as top 5 round type of quarterbacks. But, there's enough to entice you that maybe they get themselves drafted in April.
the Jets sit there with the number 10 overall selection, obviously not going to take a quarterback, but I think a lot of there's been projections, let's say, whether it's mock drafts or just talk on Twitter, whatever the case may be, that maybe a team would want to trade up to 10 and select a quarterback, whether or not that's to leapfrog the Washington Commanders right there at number 11 is moot in this scenario. Just they want to trade up. They want to get their guy. Who is the most likely quarterback you think that a team would want to trade up for and try to leapfrog another team to secure their guy for the future?
I think it's either Pickett or Willis. Again, we're talking about Kenny Pickett, the guy who can come in right away, compete for a starting job. He's going to help you win football games. Again, is his ceiling going to be Super Bowl winning quarterback? That's hard to say, but at least that he can come in and compete right away. Malik Willis, maybe he will be able to get you to the Super Bowl one day, but it's a bigger projection compared to where he is now, compared to what his ceiling is. So I think it's either one of those two players. I think that makes a lot of sense with Washington picking at number 11. There's some. Does Carolina at 6? Do they go quarterback? That's a little early for any of these guys, but quarterback desperation is a real thing in the NFL, and so I think Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, good chance one of those two guys will be the first quarterback off the board. And it possibly could be somewhere in the top 10 or somewhere in the top 15. And if it is, maybe the Jets do receive a few calls. And in that case, it'd be really interesting to see what they would be offered to move back in a scenario like that.
All right. February 28th, 10:14 in the morning, over under 0.5 quarterbacks selected in the top 10 in the NFL draft.
I will go right now where we are. I'll go with the under. I'll say that Washington there at number 11 seems like the most likely landing spot. Carolina, they invested so much. They don't have a second round pick this year because of Sam Darnold. It seems more likely they chase a veteran quarterback out there, whoever that may be. Last year they went after Matthew Stafford, weren't able to get it done. This year they're going to look for that Matthew Stafford. And so whoever that may be, Carolina, that's the direction I see them going. Denver at 9 is a possibility just because their quarterback situation's unsettled, but more likely, again, they go after a veteran and chase one of those guys that could be available. So when you look at these quarterbacks, it's been a while since we had a quarterback not drafted top 10, but I think it's very likely that it happens this year.
All right. Wow. I love that answer. That's giving me some fire up here in the morning on the East Coast. It is a little chilly and whatever. It'll be chilly in Indianapolis. So who cares? So this is how I'm going to transition here from the quarterbacks to the combine, because Kenny Pickett didn't have his hands measured in Mobile. He will in Indianapolis. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to say I am double jointed too. I don't know if you can see my thumb, but it's popping in and out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So do you do like stretches to?
That's right. That's right. For everybody who wants to measure my hands to hold a football. That's right. Exactly.
I don't know. I think Pickett kind of made a mistake by not getting his hands. Like his hands are what they are. Right. Might as well just get the conversation over with at the Senior Bowl, because now that's what everyone's going to be talking about once he gets measured. So might as well just rip the Band-Aid off. Got him measured at the Senior Bowl. Now, we know he has small hands. That's just a fact. And so it'll be if he didn't, he wouldn't be wearing gloves. So it's something that I wish he would have just ripped the Band-Aid off at the Senior Bowl. But now it'll continue to be a topic of conversation throughout this week.
It is what it is, right? Call a spade a spade. If you have small hands in the NFL combine, you just have small hands. Suck it up. Right. You're probably a good football player regardless. I remember, wasn't it Joe Burrow who tweeted like, "Oh my God, how am I ever going to throw a football with my tiny hands?"
Yeah, Joe Burrow, I think he was exactly 9 even, which that's kind of the threshold. You want to be above 9. Jared Goff dealt with the same thing. He still ended up going number 1 overall. So it's a little overblown. I think if you have a history of fumbles on tape and, the ball coming out wobbly out of your hand, all of a sudden smaller hands comes into play where it matters. But with Kenny Pickett, he cut down on the fumbles quite a bit, and I don't think you really notice smaller hands with his ability as a passer at all. So I don't think it's as big of a deal, and that's why I wish he would have just got it done. But we'll continue to hear about it throughout this week.
That's fair. So what are, in your opinion, the biggest storylines as an evaluator, something that you're looking to see, whether it's from a specific player, whether it's to hear from different personnel? Like, what are the storylines that you're going into the combine week thinking, you know what, I'm really curious to see how this plays out?
Well, I think first and foremost, we kind of have to point out the disclaimer, right? That of the three main steps of the combine, the on-field workouts are the least important. First and foremost, is the combine's about the medicals. That's why the combine was created in the first place. Second is the interviews, valuable face time for all these teams with the 324 players that will be in Indianapolis. Those two really are the most important aspects of the combine and what can really create fluctuation among the rankings. Third place is the on-field workouts, the agility testing. It's still important. Don't get me wrong. Those that this is the time of year where we hear the combine's overrated and this. Those that don't value the combine just don't understand how to use the information. It's not something that the combine shouldn't be something that alters your rankings and changes where guys are projected to be drafted. That's not how it works. But it should be a cross-checking exercise, a fail-safe measure. So it confirms what you're seeing on film. And it's also for comparison purposes. 40-yard dash, a wide receiver compared to pass wide receivers and things like that. It really helps create context for these players. And so for this week, I think, starting off, we just mentioned the quarterbacks, Matt Corral. How does he look? How does he work out? We haven't seen him since the bowl game when he got hurt against Baylor. So that'll be big for him. I want to see how some of these running backs catch the football. Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. He's my top running back this year. Wasn't asked to catch the ball that much. 3.8% of his career touches in college were receptions, only 3.8%. So just not really proven in that area. To me, he could be a top 40 pick in this draft, but I think he needs to catch the ball really well at the combine to help that. Wide receiver position, a guy like Justin Ross out of Clemson, who looked like a future top 10 pick as a freshman when we watched him during the college football playoffs against Notre Dame, against Alabama, looked outstanding. But a couple injuries, including one with a neck injury that needed surgery this past year. The quarterback situation at Clemson didn't really do him any favors. And then he had the foot injury. So Justin Ross, his projection was kind of derailed by a few of these things. So he was cleared, going to be back on the field, eager to see how he does. And I mean, really, we could talk all day about all the different things that we're looking for. Traylon Burks out of Arkansas, he's going to be 225 pounds. Is he running the 4.4s? Does he have 11-inch hands? Some of these things that are going to be really interesting to watch. I think when it comes to the 40-yard dash, if you're going to ask me, say, who's going to run the fastest, my money's on Kayvon Barnes at Baylor, the cornerback, who is, maybe not a top 2-round guy, but starting in the 3rd round, maybe you start to think about a guy with that type of speed. In high school, he ran a 10.04 in the 100 meters, which is just remarkable. I mean, that's qualifying for the Olympics type of speed. So Kayvon Barnes, he should be one of the winners this week when he is able to go, run his 40 on later this week. I
feel like if you're a fan of the NFL draft, obviously, to your point, you're excited to see the on-field workouts. You're excited to see the 40-yard dash, the bench press, the athletic freaks jumping out of the gym. My personal favorite, not that you asked, but my personal favorite is the gauntlet. I love the gauntlet. I like to see how the receivers catch it. And, in terms of the 40-yard dash, we'll talk about the gauntlet and the other drills in a minute, but the 40-yard dash, you mentioned who you think will be the winner. What about other guys that you just think will be up there? Especially guys that you think casual or somewhat casual NFL draft fans know of, right? Maybe is there a top 2-round guy that you think is going to blow the doors off the gym and really just run a blazing fast 40?
A couple of these wide receivers should. Chris Olave from Ohio State. He was a 10.8 100-meter guy in high school. He should light it up. And when you watch him play, how smooth he is, I think that'll translate really well with these other drills as well. Jahan Dotson from Penn State. He should be in the 4.3 range. I think when you look at corner, Trent McDuffie from Washington, I think he'll be one of the top testers. I talked to him last week. He told me high 4.3s, low 4.4s is his goal. Wants to get at least over 42 inches. And the crazy thing is he might not even be the most athletic defensive back coming out of Washington. That's Kyler Gordon, who is not as polished of a football player as Trent McDuffie, but his athleticism is remarkable. And, kind of fun talking to him about his background. He grew up competing in martial arts competitions, Kung Fu. He was in dance competitions, Mr. Spotlight. That was his upbringing. That was his childhood. And then at some point, middle school, he translated all that athleticism, that flexibility to football and basketball, and he grew into this player who is just a remarkable athlete on the football field, playing corner, and that should show up this week. So Kyler Gordon, not as polished of a corner as some of these other guys, but cornerback is a stopwatch position. And if you're going to post the numbers that I think Kyler Gordon is capable of, he's going to go high, maybe even in that first round.
I got to ask about two guys that have been linked to the Jets, specifically at number 4, and how big of a week it is for these two players. One is Derek Stingley. The other one is Kayvon Thibodeaux, the defensive end out of Oregon.
Yeah, with Derek Stingley, obviously, we want to see him run and work out. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to because of that foot injury that he suffered during the season. But above all, the medicals. That's what's going to be really important for him. And then just the interview process. Getting him one-on-one and figuring out, okay, what went into your thought process? What happened in the last 2 years? Do you have that alpha personality that we're looking for? I know teams are skeptical that he really has that in him. And so the interview process will be huge for Derek Stingley. And then with Thibodeaux, it's just more about selling yourself. There's a lot of, chatter out there about how he cares more about his brand than he does about football. And, is he have the passion needed to draft him top 5? And he's really going to work to be the best defensive end that he can. He should test well, but the interview process, see teams getting him one-on-one and getting to know him better. That's really what's going to either help Thibodeaux or maybe even push him down draft boards even more. Who knows? Maybe he's there at 10 if the Jets want to go in that direction. So Kayvon Thibodeaux, really a little bit of a lightning rod when you talk to teams. And this will be a big week for him to kind of, get things back on track and show that, hey, I am a guy worthy of the top overall pick that you want to invest a top 5 pick in. This is his chance to sell himself and, explain to teams why he is worthy of that selection.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be a fascinating week. I do feel like I just want to bring up 2 more guys, both edge rushers. David Ojabo feels like he's primed to have a huge week. And also Jermaine Johnson. I'm curious what your thoughts are on him. Doesn't feel like a lot of people are talking about him as an athlete. Obviously, he had a fantastic week in Mobile, really did a lot for himself at the Senior Bowl. But what kind of athlete is Jermaine Johnson? Like at the end of this combine week, is he going to get lost in the shuffle, or is he going to continue to ascend as a player, as a prospect, should I say?
Yeah, I don't know that the combine is necessarily. I think Senior Bowl was very much an opportunity for him to show out more so than the combine. Like I don't think he's going to test below average, but I think he'll be probably closer to average than David Ojabo. He's some of his athleticism. I think you see it more on the football field than I think he will in shorts and a t-shirt. But I think Jermaine Johnson will still be in that top 15 range, top 20 range, a guy that could go top 10. Might not even be on the board at number 10 when the Jets pick. So, I think he'll do okay. But David Ojabo, he should light it up. This is a guy who started playing football at Blair Academy in Jersey, and he was teammates with Jason Odafe Owe, who was a first-round pick last year of the Ravens. And Owe ran a 4.37 40-yard dash at his pro day. Talk to David Ojabo, he'll tell you he beat Owe all the time when they had 100-meter races in high school. God. So, what's that? In high school, Ojabo ran a 10.93 in the 100 meters, which anything under 11 seconds for anybody is remarkable. But especially for a David Ojabo who is, linebacker sized. And so just an unbelievable athlete. He should test well across the board. And that's why he's been projected to be this top 15 pick and a guy that could go early. The combine should only confirm that.
Who just reported it? Let me see here. One of the NFL Network guys, Ian Rappaport, just reported Evan Neal's not going to work out at the combine. He'll wait until his pro day, so we won't be able to see Evan Neal. By the way, he seems like a freak athlete too, with the split, box jump, squat, whatever that is. Like I'd like to have a sliver of the same athleticism, and I'm like a fourth of the size. So, right. But one guy I do want to bring up, also an edge rusher, not because this is just a coincidence. I know you're high on the guy, that's why. Travon Walker out of Georgia. He's huge, obviously. You have him at 6'5", 275. He'll weigh in what he weighs in Indianapolis. But do you think this could be like a coming out party for him? Because he's one of the guys that not a lot of people talk about because He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, and it feels like he's also primed to show, hey, like I'm a freaky athlete, and you might want to take me very high as well.
Yeah, he was lost a little bit in that Georgia scheme because it was so loaded with guys, and he wasn't asked to necessarily just pin his ears back and go get after the quarterback. But Travon Walker is an outstanding football player. I've talked to teams that believe he could be the best defensive player from this draft, period, when it's all said and done. So, he was ranked number 6 overall in my top 100, and I took heat for that, and that's fine with me. I'm betting on those traits, and that should show this week at the Combine. And it would be interesting to see what his weight is. Is he close to that 275, or is he heavier? Is he, if he's closer to 285, then maybe we're talking about him moving inside and being more of an interior presence. But, it kind of reminds me of, Rashawn Gary a couple years ago when he was coming out of Michigan. He was 276 pounds and just lit it up. 4.58 in the 40-yard dash, 38-inch vertical. They're just ridiculous numbers. And he ended up going 12 overall to the Packers. But if he's closer to, say, 285, then we're going to compare his numbers to, say, Cam Jordan when he was coming out of Cal. He was 287 pounds and ran a 4.76 and had all these great numbers. 7.07 in a 3-cone, which is amazing for a guy that size. So Travon Walker, I think, should be in that range when we talk about a very good tester at that size with the length, the power that he has. I mean, it's just a total package. You wish he was a little more productive in college, but when you watch the tape and you realize, okay, he wasn't asked to necessarily just, get after the quarterback, then you start to realize that that explains why, the reasons and excuses. There are reasons why the production wasn't greater. And so that factors into the evaluation.
All right. Also, other news, NFL Network reporting that Matt Corral is going to wait till his pro day. So evaluators won't get a chance to see him throw at the Combine in Indianapolis, indoors, Lucas Oil Stadium. So that's another guy. I'm sure we'll hear more as the week goes on, but those are just 2 guys. And also, if you're a Jets fan, I'm sure you're going to be watching the edge rushers, the wide receivers, how they run, how they catch, all that good juice. And we'll see what happens as the week unfolds. Then next week, we're talking Combine review, biggest winners. We'll talk about all the freak athletes as usual. So that's how we're going to wrap up this episode of NFL Draft Preview. And Dane, I'll see you later this week.
All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it.